Final match is underway with the sacrifice of a Misty Rainforest. Ingram down to 19. We'll see what land he does search up here. An Underground Sea to start things off.
And Reid's list, game one, completely creatureless. His win conditions, a couple copies of Entreat the Angels, 4 copies of Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Ingram with a Deathrite Shaman.
You know, BBD's list, he likes Stoneforge Mystic. Joe Lissette, a couple Snapcasters, a couple clicks, maybe a Venser.
Yep.
Reid, no creatures in the starting 60.
Don't need no creatures. Ingram will draw a card. It's a copy of Wasteland. A card that's not great in this matchup.
Because Reid is touching red, his deck is a little bit more non-basic dense than your blue-white builds, but he's still relatively immune. He has 3 plains, 6 islands, and a mountain, and has enough basics in his list where he feels comfortable sideboarding Blood Moon.
Yeah. Ingram going to sacrifice a polluted Delta, go get himself a tropical island. And now it's time for Dark Confidant. So Duke is going to be put to the test here pretty early. Very good card, that matchup.
This may be the most troubling threat that Peter brings to the table if you're Reid Duke.
This is an attack for 1 with the Deathrite Shaman. Duke is down to 19. Duke will draw. Miracle's offline at this point. And that is a Flooded Strand. So it's 18 all, and we'll see what land Reid wants to search up. Again, he's so basic heavy, it wouldn't surprise me to see him just go get a basic Plains. Again, his non-basics, 2 Tundra, Volcanic Island, and a Caracas, and there is a basic Plains.
Bug Delver, naturally 4 copies of Wasteland. Reid's deck needs to make a lot of land drops along the way. It's a huge cost for him to get tagged by a Wasteland, so I think he's going to be as careful as possible, trying to fetch up as many basics as possible, trying not to run his fetch lands into Stifle, which Peter is playing 3 copies of in the main deck.
Swords takes care of the Dark Confidant. So away that goes. And over to Ingram, we do go for his 3rd turn of the game. Picked up a copy of Stifle. You see the Wasteland there still. There's also a Forcible hiding out in the grip. And all Peter's going to do is pass the turn back with the ability to activate a Deathrite Shaman. You saw him very carefully not play the Wasteland, doesn't want to give away that information.
There's nothing he really needs to make a land drop for. He's got 3 mana in play between the 2 lands and the Deathrite Shaman. His deck stops at 3 mana with True Name Nemesis unless you count hard casting Force of Will. So he can afford to hold the land back and try to bluff Reid.
Swords of Plowshare is going to go bye-bye. So Duke down to 16. There's a copy of Delver of Secrets. Reid wondering how many cards Peter has in his hand. Looks like 4 or 5. We're going to go with a Counterspell. The old Natural.
Yep. An Ice Age Counterspell. I'm sure Reid was probably playing with this when he was 5 or 6 years old.
We have a bit of a battle over this. This is a Forcible, I believe, removing a Stifle from Ingram, so he needs his Delver of Secrets in play, he feels.
Not clear how much better this Stifle is getting also.
So Counterspell is counterspelled via Force of Will. Ingram will pass the turn back over to Duke. Duke will take a draw here. No Terminus. Flooded Strand was actually the draw. You can see a copy of Council's Judgment in the grip now for Reid as well. And it looks like there may be a copy of Jace the Mind Sculptor as well.
Got to be happy with the pacing of the game thus far if you're on Reid's side. He's been able to make his land drops uncontested. Peter not really up to very much thus far. Only a couple of cards left in hand. We know those are Abrupt Decays. I'm sure Reid's making an effort to not run a Counterbalance into it as much as possible. Probably shovel them away with Brainstorms and such when he gets the opportunity to.
Duke very careful once he does sacrifice that fetch land. Wants to make sure that he can play around Stifle, make sure this does resolve, but it's good to go. That's a basic Plains again, no surprise. Want to make sure that Wasteland is textless in this matchup.
There is a red Elemental Blast in Reid's main deck. So hypothetically, somewhere down the line, he wants to get red mana. But in terms of everything else in the deck, he can cast off double blue and double white.
It's Council's Judgment time. It's time for the will of the Council. Peter is going to respond by activating Deathrite Shaman. Remove the counterspell, make Duke lose 2 life, put him down to 13. And now Delver of Secrets will lose the vote, so away that goes. Ingram will untap and take a draw here. It's a copy of Ponder, get him a little deeper into his deck. That will resolve. So Peter will take a look at a couple of cards, Force of Will among them.
And it's unrealistic for Peter to be able to win this game on the back of a lone Deathrite Shaman. He needs more help. The problem is he doesn't have any counter spells left, so he's at the mercy of Terminus at that point. And this is the squeeze that the blue-white-red Miracles deck can push you in. You play one threat, Reid can either set up something more powerful or just pick it off with random removal spells. You try to develop a big board, and then Terminus sweeps it all away.
Decisions. Leave it on top. Take a draw. Spell Pierce is what he's found. I wonder if it's time to play that Wasteland. Not yet.
The Wasteland still doesn't open up anything. His hand is very colored mana intensive. So he has Spell Pierce in hand, and he can choose to Spell Pierce or Deathrite, but adding the Wasteland to the table doesn't do anything. Same with the multiple copies of Abrupt Decay in his hand.
And if you're Reid, you could probably deduce a little bit what's going on with Peter's hand. You know, the texture of it. He's not really doing very much. I wonder what's in his grip.
It has to be reactive. If he had something like Tarmogoyf in play instead of Deathrite Shaman, maybe you could guess there's some creatures there because you have a sufficient clock. The pacing of this game right now is not favoring Peter. He would add more threats to the table if he could, so you can safely rule that out. So that leaves lands, counter spells, and things like Abrupt Decay.
It's an attempt to chase the Mind Sculptor. And I'd say that's worth Spell Piercing, wouldn't you?
Yes.
So back Ingram's way we do go. He knew he was going to draw that Force of Will, as he did keep with the Ponder. Now, if you're looking for positives for Peter Ingram fans, you know, one thing that Reid doesn't have right now is a Sensei's Defining Top.
Yeah, he's still playing what amounts to be a fair game. I like playing the Wasteland in this spot. Now that Reid has all of his colored mana in play, hard casting Force of Will should be something on Peter's radar. So I liked holding it for as long as he did, hoping that Reid might trip up and get a Tundra or Volcanic Island. But now that Reid's assembled this particular mana base, it's good to just put it into play.
I see the hoping that Reid trips up strategy.
Listen, you gotta try what you can, you know?
Ah, yes. A winning move. Many have taken that line and many have failed.
You can only play the cards that are in your hand. What are you gonna do?
That's a counterbalance. If you're Peter, you don't mind.
Sweet.
Yeah.
You hope Reid's hand is nothing but counterbalances.
Yeah. This Abrupt Decay stinks. Now it does something. The question is, does he want to use it now, or does he want to activate Deathrite Shaman now?
I think for the time being, I would just activate the Deathrite Shaman.
He's going to go with the Decay.
Unless you're actually trying to free something up. I guess this allows Peter to draw something next turn and cast it.
Yep.
Although Reid would be flipping blind in any case. And Peter drew True Nemesis, so paid off nicely for his use of Abrupt Decay.
Yeah. The question is, does he try to cast it here? And it looks like the answer is no. So Duke will untap and take a draw here. This looks to be a miracle. And he's going to say, hey, you know what? Sure. I'll cast Terminus. And that's going to take care of the Council's Judgment. Duke's going to go down to 11. It's a good thing Ingram didn't deploy that True Name Nemesis.
Yep, the pacing of everything thus far has been really good for Peter. He can get this True Name into play. Puts a lot of pressure on Reid to find specific cards. Entreat the Angels, can't block it naturally. Source of Plashers doesn't kill it.
But he will wait and pass the turn back over to Duke, who will draw a card. This is a copy of Counterbalance. Again, Peter does not care. He has another copy of Abrupt Decay in his hand. And I imagine he will use it, and he does. Ingram will draw a card here. And what I imagine Peter's doing is saying, hey, I need another blue card so that I can Force of Will whatever your answer may be to this True Name Nemesis. Try to protect that thing and get in 4 shots with it to win the game.
Terminus or Council's Judgment. There is a second copy in Reid's list, so.
And I believe the second copy may be in his hand right now, because he does have 3 mana, and there is the second Council's Judgment. And I think this is going to be a pretty quick Force of Will removing days, and there that is. So we'll see if this resolves.
Peter definitely has a plan.
That's a Brainstorm in response. That's Duke's last card.
Again, Reid does have that main deck Red Blast, which would be a backbreaker right now.
2 cards go back very quickly. All that stuff resolves. There's a top. That's not so bad.
I'm sure the first card Reid would have liked to find there was the Red Elemental Blast. I believe he will settle for Sensei's Defining Top.
Hard to pass that up. You saw the exchange on the stack again. Council's Judgment gets attempt at Force of Will. Reid says, I'll brainstorm a response, put 2 cards back, leave the top in my hand. Brainstorm's done resolving. Force of Will resolves on the Council's Judgment. And here we are. An attack for 3 puts Duke down to 8. It's a 3-turn clock. Ingram will just pass the turn back. But before Reid untaps, he says, I will spin my top for the first time this match. Untap and draw, not a miracle. It's a brainstorm, though. That's good to go. So Reid will take a look at 3 cards.
I think there may be a terminus in that top 3.
And he will plan carefully here. Again, he gets to keep 1 of these, puts 2 back, and then if he chooses to spin the top, he gets to see a new 3rd card down.
Yeah. Slowly, excruciatingly can look at 1 fresh card.
And he does just that on his main phase. Gonna reorganize things a touch here. Put that back. And kick it back to Ingram. And right away, Duke says terminus. This could be maybe a stifle for Ingram on the miracle trigger, perhaps.
Now, Reid is doing this in the upkeep to prevent Peter from drawing the stifle you just alluded to, or a 5th land alongside Force of Will.
That's good to go, though. True Nemesis is going to go to the bottom. Ingram draws his card for the turn. And all he can do is pass the turn back over to Duke. And you can see the construction of Duke's deck really paying off here. 6 basics in play.
And I think that may be... No, that isn't even close to all of them. There's still 4 more islands in this list. Never mind. But all the plains and the mountain are in play right now.
When you just think of Legacy, you don't think of decks having 10 basics that are 3 colors.
Well, 2.5.
Sure.
Not really a 3-color
Yeah,
deck, you know?
you're right about that. You're right
You can
about
play
that.
games without red mana.
Here's a Tarmogoyf. They're going to count it up, see how big that Lurgoyf is.
I'm guessing 6, 7 is my guess. Almost.
It's all right. You're new
No
here.
creature, but Planeswalker plus enchantment. Alongside the stock land, sorcery, and instant.
Yep. Reid will spin. Terminus is what he has found yet again. Such a powerful card in this deck. He's already cast 2. He might be casting his 3rd one soon. He is at 8. 2 hits in that Tarmogoyf. This game is over. And Duke will pass the turn back. Over to Ingram. And on the upkeep again, he's going to activate the top. There is Terminus, and he will pay the miracle cost of a single white mana. So bye-bye Tarmogoyf.
Reid really needs Peter to miss 1 or 2 draw steps. There is, some risk of Reid not being able to cobble together answers in time if Peter presents a steady stream of creatures. But if he misses for, say, 1 or 2 turns, Reid's likely to be able to assemble something with that Divining Top to lock this game up.
You may wonder, why is Peter sacrificing this blue to Delta right now? I think for a couple of reasons. One, you like to take a land out of his deck, and that's a small percentage game. But put the Tarmogoyf and the True Nemesis back in, because drawing those right now is actually pretty good.
Deathrite Shaman as well.
Yeah.
They've all been terminused away. So normally I like holding onto the fetch land there. I don't know what the numbers actually bear out to be on the top of my head, but the fact that so many of his good draws are on the bottom of his deck means that he has more of an incentive than he normally does. Normally you just want to hold on to that, so you draw a Brainstorm or Ponder, you can make it more efficient. But a lot of the quality cards in Peter's deck are on the bottom.
Ingram going to play a Flooded Strand here. That's land number 5 for a hardcast Force of Will. This is the Sensei's Divining Top. And Peter's going to give this some thought. And I like this simply because even if he doesn't have Force of Will, it's the thought that maybe I do have a Force of Will.
Well, I don't think Reid's buying it. I think that would definitely get Force of Will if that was the card in Peter's hand.
There's a Scalding Tarn. That'll allow Reid to shuffle his deck if he doesn't like what he sees on the top of his deck. And he will sacrifice this right now to play around Stifle. So that's good to go. Reid will get a basic island. Again, 6 of those in his main deck. Ingram will draw a card. It's another land, a copy of Misty Rainforest. The only spell that he currently has in his hand is a copy of Spell Pierce.
And this feels like the turn in which Reid is going to take this game over. He can miss with the Divining Top for a little bit, I suppose, but
he does get to see 3 new ones, and I think one of those cards in that 3 is a copy of Entreat the Angels, I believe, but we will find out here as Duke does draw a card. That's island number 4. That's a Jace the Mind Sculptor. And things are taking a turn. And that's in there. Jace is going to brainstorm. So 3 cards here for Duke. As usual, 2 will go back, 1 will stay in the grip.
And now with Divine Top plus Jace, a lot of Peter's draws, even his creatures now, aren't very valuable. It's True Name Nemesis or bust in terms of productive draws from this juncture.
All Ingram can do is pass as Duke will spin the top. It's time to brainstorm again. Wants to get a huge advantage maybe before starting to Fate Seal.
And he's picked up a red Elemental Blast and a Force of Will. A commanding hand.
That might be the check mark in this game. A copy of Dark Confidant isn't the worst thing I've ever seen, but it's not great either. Ingram will deploy that. And Duke can decide if he wants to hardcast Forcible. I imagine he senses some weakness here from Peter.
Now that he has a red Elemental Blast as insurance against True Name Nemesis, which is the primary concern at this point, he can be a little bit more liberal about using some of his other counterspells on other things. He still may be fine letting this resolve and just say, okay, I'll unsummon it with Jace and correct my draw with Sensei's Divine Top. But I feel like there's a strong argument for using a counterspell here. Just want to keep brainstorming.
Duke will cast Forcible in the Dark Confidant, with, of course, enough mana to pay for the Spell Pierce. So all systems go as Reid will spin the top. We'll draw a card. We'll cast a Brainstorm. Time to set a couple cards back here in just a moment.
One of which is Entreat, which looks like it's going on the top.
Yep. Ingram will draw. Copy of Deathrite Shaman is what he's found. That resolved. Yeah, I mean, that did resolve. I'm not sure Duke cares all that much, especially when he has Entreat on top of his deck.
Yeah, I was going to say that at this point, a resolved Entreat, not a lot for Peter's deck to do about it. There's no copies of something like Maelstrom Pulse.
Yeah, Reid says, I'm going to activate the top. And let's make some angels, shall we? He'll make 3 of them. Doesn't need to really make any more. He wants to be able to cast Red Elemental Blast if a counterspell shows up. Here's Spell Piercing. He wants to be able to pay for that.
Also, the last turn when Reid went and Force of Willed the Dark Confidant, with 3 mana left over, Peter didn't do anything about it, so he can probably assume that whatever disruption Peter has in his hand, it does not allow him to play over the top of 3 untapped mana. So Reid just setting up the same stage there.
A small smirk from both Duke and Ingram as Duke does win game number 1 over Peter Ingram. Blue, white, red, Miracles, up a game over Bug Delver. We'll take a look at the sideboards in just a moment. We're actually going to bring it back to the booth here very quickly because we do want to ask our trivia question one more time. Matthias and I asked one after the first game of the last match, and so we're going to ask the same one again because our semifinal is kind of long.
Yeah, sure.
So
takes a while. You might be hopping in just now. Maybe you're a Reid Duke fan.
Absolutely.
Maybe you skipped incorrectly, skipped the Tom Ross match.
He's right.
Et cetera, et cetera. So we'll run it back.
Very simply, in Tom Ross's deck, even though he is playing a lot of Infect cards, one of the mechanics from New Phyrexia was Phyrexian mana, and he does have a Phyrexian mana spell in his deck. The question is, which one is it? Again, he's got a lot of Infect cards, but not a lot of Phyrexian mana spells. So if you can name the Phyrexian mana spell in his deck, hashtag the answer with the hashtag SCG Premium. Make sure you're following an SCG Live, and again, we will announce the winner at the conclusion of our semifinal round. And now we will take a look at the sideboards of this other semifinal match here between Duke and Ingram. I believe that things get a little bit better here for Peter. He's got 2 Grafdigger's Cages, a Needle, 2 Disfigures, 2 Diverts, a Flusterstorm, a Force of Will, a Golgari Charm, a Spell Pierce, a Vendilion Click, 2 Maelstrom Pulses, and I think most importantly, 2 copies of Thoughtseize.
He does improve a little bit here with those cards. He can bring in the Thoughtseizes, the Vendilion Click, the Spell Pierce. Flusterstorm is good against certain elements of Reid's deck, not good against others.
Yep.
I still think it's probably worth bringing in. I think the one Pithy Needle will definitely come in. It's a great answer to Sensei's Divine Top. So these are some nice tools. On the other side, I believe Reid picks up the best card in the entire matchup, which is 2 copies of Blood Moon.
Yep.
He has a Grafdigger's Cage, a Tormod's Grip, a Baneslayer Angel, a Rest in Peace, a Blue Elemental Blast, 2 Pyroblast, a Red Elemental Blast, a Spell Pierce, 2 Vendilion Click, Supreme Rogue, Terminus. So I think Reid's going to want the additional 2 sweepers, the 2 copies of Vendilion Click, the Spell Pierce, the Red Blasts are all reasonable. The Rest in Peace will come in as Peter's threat base, very graveyard-centric, Tarmogoyf, Deathrite Shaman. But the 2 copies of Blood Moon, this is something that Bug Delver cannot function against. When it enters play, whatever Peter has on the table, that's what's there. And
if he's able to get a little creative and float some mana to cast Abrupt Decay, that's one thing. But you know, the thing that I think that's actually really tough here for Peter is that I think there's a world where Reid is like, I'm going to board out my counterbalances because you have Abrupt Decays. And Peter actually has to leave his Abrupt Decays in because of Blood Moon.
I believe those will be the first cards that Reid cuts in this matchup.
Counterbalance?
It's too hard to establish the lock. Post-board, Peter even has answers to Divining Top, much less Counterbalance.
Yeah.
You also don't know, Peter may be bringing in the Golgari Charm as well to give him more answers to Rest in Peace and Blood Moon. So I think those enchantments are going to be the first thing to leave Reid's deck. But you're right, Peter has to leave an Abrupt Decay because there is the threat of Counterbalance, and these other enchantments that Reid's bringing to the table are problematic for him as well.
Game 2 underway here shortly for you guys. You just see both players are shuffling. Now let's not forget the winner of this match plays against Tom, the Boss Ross. But the winner of this match will be headed to our Players Championship, as Tom already has an invite, so the invite will pass down.
An incredible accomplishment for Tom. Back-to-back finalist, potentially back-to-back winner.
Here's the thing.
It's hard to imagine that record ever getting touched if that happens.
I love Jerry. I do. Love him to death. One of my best friends in the entire world. Back-to-back open wins is really something. Back-to-back finalists of the Invitational, or potentially back-to-back winner, I think that's the best thing we've seen on the Open Series.
And if I'm being honest, I think Tom's got a good matchup against either one of these players.
I think so. I do think so.
I'm really worried about Peter's matchup here post-board because of the Blood Moon. The thing is, it's a totally tertiary plan for Reid. He doesn't have to Blood Moon lock him to beat Peter. He can just win a normal game like you saw in Game 1. The problem is that Peter has to respect the possibility of Blood Moon at every juncture of the game, and if he doesn't, he can just lose outright at a moment's notice.
I am in agreement with you.
He doesn't need Blood Moon to win. Reid can go, punch for punch with Bug Delver.
He just showed that.
Yep, and exactly, it was a game where he didn't have Divine Top for a very long time. Was just able to, and Peter's draw was fine. He flooded out a little bit towards the end of the game, but Peter's draw overall was fine. Reid was able to win a conventional game, but now with Blood Moon, there's going to be a percentage of games he just gets to cheat.
Well, game number 2. Peter Ingram will be on the play. Hey, he's got an uphill climb, but I think he knows that.
Yeah.
Not saying he can't win. He beat Miracles. Shiho Yin was playing it, so he can do it, and Shiho had Blood Moon as well.
Like I said, 75 to 75. I'd rather have Peter's list in the matchup. But that's a little bit different when the two players are actually on the table,
Tough to argue. Tough to argue. Peter looked thrilled to you?
That is a look of a man very happy with his 6-card
Looks like a snap keep to me. I'm a little rusty with the body language. Yeah, I'm taking mulligan.
The thing is that Bug Delver really, there's no way for him to bluff a capable hand because he has no nut draw.
Yeah.
It's just lands and spells or a mulligan. So if you tank forever and say, I keep with a really good hand, it's like, okay, it doesn't even, it looks no different than what your bad hands look like.
Down to 6 he goes. Look, you can't keep a hand like that when you contort your face in such a way. Come on. There's no way he's keeping that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. No one likes mulliganing, but send it back, old PD boy.
There is a moment where I went over to the feature match area on my break. Gerard Fabiano playing the standard potion. Historically, not someone who likes to mulligan.
Nope, never.
Draws up his opening hand, and it's 3 swamps, 2 mutavaults, a negate, and a pithing needle.
Snap it off.
He looks at the hand for a long time, mulligans, then looks up at me and says, only because you're here. Just a wildly unkeepable hand.
In Underground C, it's how we'll start it up for game number 2. Duke with an island. He'll kick it back over to Ingram. No top again. That's a small victory for Peter. Here's a brainstorm.
The smallest of victories.
Yeah. Duke, Pierce hits.
I like this very aggressive use of Spell Pierce on an opponent on 5 cards.
Yeah, I would too. There's a brainstorm. So 1, and 2, and 3. Wasteland among them, but we know that Wasteland's not so great. It's a fun, this is the magic of live television right here.
So the fire alarm is going off in the building.
It sure is.
Not really sure how this gets resolved.
Play on. That's what I would do. That's what we're going to briefly do. We'll see what we're directed to do here by Jared Silver, our tournament director, in just a moment.
I know that the Duke is unfazed.
No, the Duke will play and continue to play very well. So as soon as we're told what to do, we will do it. Oh, look at that.
All right, well, we'll be back in a bit.
Yeah, let's bring it back to the booth because I guess we'll be back in a minute. Live television, what do you say?
Yeah, all right, the building's not burning down behind us, which is a small victory, I suppose, but you can see people kind of shuffling around. We're being evacuated, so I think we're going to go, I guess, to a commercial.
New Jersey.
We're going to hold the match.
A
fire can happen anywhere.
New Jersey. We'll be back hopefully after this. Live television, people.
On November 14th through 16th, StarStateGames.com is proud to host the Can't Miss Magic Event of the Year, Grand Prix New Jersey, and this event is going to be huge. It all starts with the perks.